Hi, my name is Dr. Victoria Bernath. I'm a researcher and violist with the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment. As a young player, I was told it took guts to play early music. Today, we're going to find out why with an inside scoop on the history of violin gut strings from the year 1550 to the present day. At the OAE, gut strings are an important part of how we interpret music from the Baroque, Classical and Romantic periods. We use gut strings on all bowed instruments, including violins, violas, cellos and double basses. So what are gut strings exactly? Gut strings are twisted organic cords originally made from the intestines of sheep. One of the earliest names for a gut string was catgut. The name suggests that a cat's intestines were used to make these strings. Rest assured though, no feline friend was ever harmed in the process. We believe this misunderstanding stems from the 1590s, when kits, small obsolete fiddles, were strung with gut strings. This gave rise to the term kitgut, which then became misinterpreted as catgut. In today's manufacture of gut strings, the intestines of other animals may be used, including those of cows, goats, and rams. Here are some examples from a sheep, which my local butcher gave to me this morning. There are two fundamental types of gut strings, pure and overspun. A pure gut string is just that, a cord made from natural guts dried and then twisted together. My A string, for example, is a pure gut string. Pure guts were the first type of string used on members of the violin family when these instruments came onto the musical scene in the 1550s. An overspun string, on the other hand, has a gut core covered with a fine wrapping of metal wire, usually silver or copper. My C and G strings are such examples. The overspun string was a significant development that happened in the 1660s. To this day, we do not know who invented overspun strings for the violin family. However, an early accredited example of overspun strings appears in John Playford's book, An Introduction to the Skill of Music, published in London in 1664. Initially, only the lowest pure gut strings were replaced with overspun strings, such as the C string on the viola. However, the trend of overspun strings gradually gained popularity, and when synthetic strings were introduced in the early 20th century, the production of pure gut strings was almost eclipsed. Who invented gut strings, and where do they come from? Well, we can trace the use of gut strings on musical instruments back to ancient civilization in Egypt, thanks to two sources. Firstly, iconographic examples painted on the walls of tombs from the 3rd dynasty. Secondly, a fully functioning dancer's lute with gut strings dating from the 18th dynasty. By contrast, the earliest use of gut strings on Western string instruments remains a mystery. We do know that Germany and Italy were important centres of gut string production at the end of the 16th century. However, most historical sources and our subsequent understanding of this early period come from Italy. Unfortunately, the origins of the German industry is a neglected field of study. Indeed, sources and records of gut string making across Europe before the 17th century are few and far between. In Italy, the city of Rome was a leading producer of violin gut strings in Europe for almost 250 years. Here, the gut string trade became a highly lucrative and competitive business, located in the Regola district beside the river Tiber. The Roman cadari, the Italian term for string makers, had humble origins. They came to Rome as economic migrants escaping hardship in the Abruzzo region of Italy in the 1560s. The Roman cadari shops were family-run ventures who fiercely guarded their manufacturing techniques. Writing of his travels to Italy in the mid-18th century, French astronomer and writer Jérôme de Lalande noted, "The making of violin strings is a phenomenon that is almost restricted to Italy, with Naples and Rome supplying the whole of Europe. A great mystery surrounds these exclusive branches of trade." By 1735, the Roman cadari had expanded to 20 shops, and the prestige of the cadari violin strings, especially the chanterelle, was known throughout Europe. A chanterelle is the highest string on any bowed instrument, but today we mostly use this term in reference to the E string on the violin. Famous violinists, including Louis Spohr and Niccolò Paganini, noted their preferences for Italian strings. Even the flourishing French string makers of Lyon, considered Italy's greatest competitors at the time, imported more than 300,000 Roman strings per year to sell in their own French shops. So what made a good or a great gut string? We know that violin gut strings from the end of the 16th century onwards were judged by 3 factors. Firstly, purity of sound. This was also known as a true string versus a false string. Secondly, durability. How long the string lasted before snapping. And third, the finish of a string, i.e. the polish, smoothness and colour of a string. Going back to the first factor, what do we mean by a true versus a false gut string? What's the difference? A false string does not oscillate properly, and therefore the sound or resonance made with a bow or finger does not match the intended pitch. For example, if you wanted to play the open D string on your instrument, but the string is false, you would not produce the expected pitch D when playing the open string. This is due to inequalities and varieties of texture within the guts. Thankfully, that is the sound of a D, which means that my D string is indeed true. In 1570, French lutenist Adrien Lecroix devised a guide for testing the trueness of gut strings. It became the standard for musicians, including composer and violinist Louis Spohr, who replicated the advice and Lecroix's illustration in his Violonchule of 1832. Lecroix's method involves pulling a gut string taut, one end in each hand. Next, you pluck the cord repeatedly with a finger. Watch the movement of the string. If the vibration is even and regular, you have a true string. If the vibrations produce a quick or uneven shape, your string is unfortunately false. It will not afford you the trademark, beautiful, warm sound a gut string should provide. On occasion, a brand new string may be false. There is nothing quite as frustrating as spending a pretty penny on a new gut string, popping it on your viola, only to discover that, twang, the string is false, and your investment has been for naught. Period paintings of musicians and instruments provide valuable source material as we try to understand earlier uses and types of gut strings. When we look at these images, sometimes the strings are coloured differently, and you may wonder why that is. The colour variations you see are not fanciful interpretations of the artist. Gut strings did come in different colours, lengths and widths. The colours you see are the combined or individual results of 4 actions which happened during the manufacturing of gut strings. Firstly, natural colour variation happened when chemical compounds were added to clean the guts. This usually resulted in different shades of brown. Secondly, Some strings were intentionally dyed or bleached to hide stained guts. A highly bleached gut has a white appearance, and these strings were prone to snapping more easily. Thirdly, bold-coloured dyes, such as blues or reds, were used to distinguish between different types of strings, although these primarily happened for lute and harp strings. Last but not least, metallic sheens. Overspun strings have that lovely lustre thanks to the fine metal covering on top of the gut core. At the end of the 19th century, the invention of all metal and synthetic strings created stiff competition for gut strings. Demand for pure gut strings all but disappeared during the Second World War. Let's hear the difference between gut and synthetic strings now. A revival of historically informed performance practices in the 1960s stimulated demand for pure gut strings. Today, the skill of making pure gut strings is once again in full swing, and gut strings, both pure and overspun, are important aspects of interpreting different periods of early music. The warm tone quality that previously endeared the ears and hearts of many is once again charming performers and listeners alike. I hope you enjoyed this inside scoop on gut strings, and thanks for watching.